that.
David muted.
Try again, Ms. Crutchfield.
To the workshop Tuesday, July 21st, 2020.
Can she hear it?
Yes, she can hear it.
You got your sound on?
Dave, are you in
Ma'am?
Kathy's my link's not working.
Can I what?
Can you forward your keys to Kathy for me? She's just emailed that her link's not working. She's wanting to know.
Want me to have Tina do that?
Yeah, ask her to, please.
Oh, did you say something? Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's.
they hear you now.
Okay.
But Miss Joyner's having problems, so if we could just pause for a minute.
Okay. Okay, good. Marla, she just got invited.
Okay.
Give me a heads up whenever.
I think we're ready. Miss Joyner's there.
Will you please stand and join me in the flag salute, and Mr. Shirley will lead us in prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's right. Father, we thank you for the day and the blessings you've given us, and all the matters that we're going to undertake today and every day. We want to look after the children, staff, community, Lord, and help us to have wisdom to do the right thing. Give us guidance. We pray that you'll be with the family of Jennifer Boyd and the terrible tragedy that's taken place in that family, and in our family as well, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Welcome to the Tuesday, July 21st, 2020 workshop. Our first order is 97.01. Yes, 5-year work plan with public input.
And that'll be Mr. Suber.
Mr. Super, you up on the screen. There he is.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to get started off. As you know, I bring most of what we're looking forward to for this school year, as well as other projects we currently have in the 5-year plan. The actual 5-year work plan is not due until the end of October, but I usually just go over the things that we have on the agenda for right now, and some things will be changing. We're waiting on enrollment numbers and everything else in this kind of a strange year we're going into to see where things are going to lie. So that will make a difference on how we proceed forward and what years we do things. I'm going to try to share my screen with you right now. Does everybody see that?
No.
No?
Mm-mm.
How about that?
Here it comes.
Yes.
All right. Great. My first time actually doing that. So to start out with this year, our current projects, obviously the South Sumter Stadium project is in progress. We're moving along there after some little hiccups we had back earlier. We're proceeding with that rather nicely now. Wildwood Middle High Stadium project to take place kind of in the same time frame that South Sumter's has, starting at the second semester. County office parking area, we're going to be able to do something with that this year. Then we have Wildwood Elementary basketball court resurface, gym renovations, a gym floor replacement, and a switch for the Wildwood Elementary cafeteria so we can add a generator up there. Future projects, and like I said, some of the things will be dependent on how things go forward from here. We have a classroom building at Lake Pan Elementary School that's been in the 5-year plan for quite some time that we've continued to push out due to enrollment. Also, the classroom building at South Central Middle School, as well as one at Bushnell, and some other things that have been in the 5-year plan, the gang bathroom at Bushnell, sewer plant replacement at Lake Pan, Building 9 renovations at Bushnell, media center expansion at Wildwood Elementary School, bus loop repave, increased cafeteria seating at South Central Middle, and moving right along, locker room renovations at South Central Middle School, actual hookup to city water and the sewer plant replacement there at administrative complex. We've also discussed additional egress at the administrative complex. A couple of bus loop repaves there for South Central Middle and South Central High. Lake Pan Elementary School cafeteria and front office entrance renovation. Administrative complex front office renovation. And building 8s at both our high schools. And some things we've added more recently, the outdoor dining area at Webster, and going along with the classroom building at South Central Middle School would be the raised building 14 there. Things to consider, kind of the same things we did last year, the maintenance costs increasing. We have original equipment at many of our schools, but we have done well over the past couple of years with replacing a lot of our HVAC units that were either original or had been in place for quite some time. And big thing to consider is what our student enrollment numbers are going to look like going back to school this time. And as I stated at the beginning, I'll bring our recommendations for moving forward with your input before the October due date. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Super. Is there anyone with any questions? The public, is there any public questions that anybody has? This is for public input. So on that segment, if anybody has a question. What about the board members? Ms. Moss, do you have any questions?
No questions for Mr. Subers. Just thank you very much. I look forward to getting the October report.
Ms. Joyner, any questions? I can't hear her. Can't hear Ms. Joyner. And Mr. Williams.
No questions this time. I've read through the report, and glad to hear things are back on schedule there at South Central.
Can you hear me now, Ms. Norris? I don't have any questions for Mr. Suber.
Okay, thank you. Next we have, and I just wanted to remind everyone that we are social distancing here, so we're abiding by the law. Next we have 97.1, the opening plan with public input. Ms. Moffitt.
I have quite a bit to share this evening. First, I want to discuss that on July the 6th, we received, this is echoing, July the 6th, we received the information from DOE on how we needed to proceed. They received the template and the assurances. And the assurances that the state asked us to abide by, there were 7 of them. The first one was that we had to reopen in August. The district will ensure that all brick and mortar schools are open at least 5 days per week for all students, subject to advice and orders of the Florida Department of Health and other agencies. Assurance 2 had to do with that we provide a full array of services for families who wish to educate their children in brick and mortar. That included our low-income families, our vulnerable students, our homeless, our students with disabilities, students in foster care, that we looked at all of those children to be sure that they were receiving their services. Assurance number 3 had to do with progress monitoring. They wanted to be sure that we were monitoring our students' progress, no matter whether they were at the traditional unit or in the Teams, Sumter or alternative unit or program, because they wanted to be sure that we were meeting their needs, and we were helping them catch up from the lack of the complete education system that we had in place. Assurance number 4, they wanted to ensure that we work with IEP teams to determine the needs and the services needed for those students. And assurance number 5, they want to be sure that we work with our English language learners, also to be sure that we have identified them and their identified English skills that they needed to be remediated on. Assurance number 6 is that we had to assure that we were going to share our progress monitoring data with the state periodically during the year. And assurance number 7 is that we had to extend the same flexibility in instructional methods to every charter school that submitted a reopening plan to our district that we had to review and approve. So we are stating that we are going to follow all of those assurances. Our plan and those assurances are due to DOE July the 31st. And to go into our plan, all of our information is located on the district website. There's a reopening tab, we have survey information, we have technology information, we have food, transportation, custodial standards, their July reopening plan, and this one. The board members received this about a week ago, and so there's been a few changes that we'll discuss during this. In our plan, we have a table of contents, we have the invited committee members. Not all committee members showed up, it was during the summer, but we did invite people from every school to attend. On page 4, it starts out with parent choices. We have identified 3 choices. One is our traditional reopening, in which students would come back 5 days a week.
There's a little bit of sound issues, so be sure you're close to the mic. With all those,
So our first option is traditional, and it will be 5 days a week with the teacher in the classroom. However, there will be some things put in place that we'll discuss in a moment that will help keep those children safe. It is to represent and return to campus where kids will interact directly with their teachers and their classmates. Our goal is to create an environment that provides an opportunity for students to return to the traditional school experience while providing effective safeguards to protect the health and safety of students and staff. Our second option is Team Sumter e-learning. This is designed for families who would like to maintain their connection with their school, but do not feel comfortable sending their students back to the regular school during the first semester. This option has only been approved by DOE for 1 semester. After the first semester, students will resume school in the traditional school setting based on state guidelines. Students will sign in and attend school remotely, follow a standard school schedule, bell times, and the event schools are closed due to COVID or due to a hurricane, then all students would be on Team Sumter. Upon initial sign-up, we are asking that parents who choose this option make a 9-week commitment. And the reason we're doing that is because that's a grading period, and it's much easier to switch children back and forth between systems if you have a full grading period. That's better for the children. Our third option is Sumter Virtual, something that we've had in place for a while. And this is for students who wish to have more control of their learning path and pace, who have a flexible day. The difference between the Team Sumter and SBS, Team Sumter, the children will be logged in from 8 to 9:30 in their ELA block, from 9:30 to 10 o'clock math or whatever. They'll have a schedule, and they'll be with a teacher during that whole time, and they will be logged in. Sumter Virtual is where you are flexible into the fact that you can sleep until 10 o'clock and do your work, or you can sleep until 9 o'clock at night and do your work at night. That's the difference between the two. One is more flexible than the other. And then, of course, every parent has the option for home ed. We also, one of the assurances that we had to provide is that the kids on Team Sumter and the kids in the traditional have the same curriculum opportunities, receiving the same lessons, the same assignments, and having the same experience. So we will be using the same curriculum maps for both of those models, and those teachers will plan together. They'll collaborate together, and because we want a transition, a smooth transition between programs when the students return. Again, we talk about progress monitoring. We're using iReady, Common Lit, USA Test Prep, and Study Island. Those are programs that we have had in place. The USA Test Prep, we piloted last year, and we're using that for high school math and science. Study Island. Those are programs that we have had in place. USA Test Prep. Okay. We're also going to be working with our students on their instructional technology skills. So they'll be doing emailing, Microsoft Teams, logging into Skyward, using ClassLink. You might be used to the term of Clever. Clever has been replaced with ClassLink. And also we'll be using Myon for AR and Access 360. Now, due to possibility of a class, a building, or a school being shut down, all teachers will be required to develop a week's worth of e-learning lessons, whether they're in traditional model, it doesn't matter. Because we could very easily get a phone call on a Friday afternoon from the health department being asked to shut down, and school would need to resume on Monday. And so we would have lessons prepared so that there would be no lapse in educational opportunities. Our plan contains general guidelines, how we will use the media center. All students will be on a one-to-one device, a Windows-based device, pre-K through 12. Pre-K will not have the option of the Teams. It is a voluntary program, so they will have to come to the brick and mortar. One of the changes on page 9 for the board members.
Sound just went out.
I cannot hear as well.
Mm-mm. No sound.
I can hear Miss Moss, but I cannot hear Mrs. Moffett.
My microphone muted for some reason. Try now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. On page 9, we talked about student arrival, and we originally were saying that staff would do a visual look at students, assessment of students to see if they had any symptoms. We now are going to be checking students' temperatures daily upon arrival at the school. If the reading is 100.4 or above, a second thermometer check will be taken. If the student's temperature is still at 100.4 or higher, the child will be isolated and sent home. We discussed supervision, changing of classes, social distancing. We have a teacher stand at the door so the kids are not all grabbing the handles. We're making traffic flow patterns on the campus. We are arranging the furniture, just like in here. We separated the tables. Out there, we separated chairs. We're asking the schools to do the same thing. Physical education, music, and recess. Kids will have access to those opportunities. It will look different. The music teacher will come to the class versus the class going to the music teacher. PE and recess will happen, but they'll stay with their cohort class. They won't be going out and all 5th grade be out there together. They might be out there together, but they're not going to be all mixed in. There'll be this class over here with this teacher and this class with that teacher. We're trying to keep those kids in their cohorts as much as possible. Cafeteria. We will be social distancing in the cafeteria. They're going to sit all on one side of the table, every other seat. We've also made extra room for outdoor seating so that we can utilize that space as well. Let's see. Transportation. And before I get any further, masks will be required for students and staff on campus and on the bus. On the bus, we'll limit the kids to 50 students per bus. That's 2 per seat. They will be wearing masks. The buses will be disinfected before the run. High touch areas will be done in the middle of the day, and then also be sanitized at the end of the day. Student dismissal, when kids go out and get in their cars, they're going to have to wear masks. Masks are required. The only time they'll be taking them off will be at lunch, or if they are sitting in their desk and they are 6 feet apart, they may remove the mask at their desk or any time that they can have that 6 feet distance, social distancing. And we're also going to ask teachers to, let's take a face mask break. Everyone sit where they're at, take the mask off, breathe for a few minutes, and then put it back on. I had to do that today with Shield. I had to take a Shield break. But anytime that you get within 6 feet, the masks come on for the adults and for the students. So we're asking what to expect from Team Sumter. Team Sumter, the parent, of course, is going to have to be involved. There's going to have to be a place for the child to work. We'll provide the device, but they will be interacting with the teacher the whole time they are on the Teams program. Now, for secondary, courses will be limited. Not every course that we have in a high school will be able to be offered through Team Sumter. Some of the major issues are advanced courses, some of our CTE programs. Those are going to be difficult to offer through Teams. So just know that in advance. We have expectations. We have our curriculum alignment piece. We've talked about the progress monitoring, and whether you're on Teams or traditional, the progress monitoring pieces are the same. They'll be done via the computer. On page 15, there was just a slight change when it talked about elementary expectations. In the middle of the page, we talked about the day would look like 90 minutes of ELA, 60 minutes of math, 30 minutes of science for grades 2 through 5, 60 minutes of iReady, Myon, Reflex Math, some of their computer programs that they use for supplementals, 30 minutes of electives such as music and PE, 30 minutes of daily instruction in other content areas. Social studies will be blended in the reading and ELA block and content. There will be time for a student to have a 20-minute recess even at home. And we were going to give 60 minutes for lunch and breaks. And then teachers will have plenty of time during that day sometime. But students, that was kind of what the makeup of the kids' day would look like. At secondary level, that will look different. They have 48-minute periods, and so they'll change classes every 48 minutes. Now, if by chance there comes out from the state of the health department that we have to strictly monitor social distancing, where we're going to have 1 per 10 in the class, then what we have is called a modified schedule. You'll find that on page 16, and that is where we would do like an AP schedule. Teachers would have planning on Monday. Half the kids would come on a Tuesday and a Thursday and have class at school, and then Wednesday and Friday they would have continue their work on the computer at home, and then we would reverse that. And we'd have kids on Wednesday and Friday, and then they would do their work on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But that is an option that we have prepared in case we have to strictly adhere to social distancing of the 1 to 10. We also have plans in here. We have many students that fall into special populations. We have our English language learners. We have our exceptional student education. We have our hospital homebound students. We have our medically vulnerable students. We have our students that are in MTSS, which is the multi-tiered systems of support. And we have students that fall under the nonviolent crisis prevention intervention classes. And all of those areas are addressed in our plan to be sure that we are providing their services based on their IEP, their individual education plan, their 504 plan. And if they have one of those plans, our ESC director is looking at the students who have chosen to go to Teams and seeing if that is possible for them. There's some services that they may not be able to have. So that will be an IEP decision. So Ms. Dustin is working with those families individually. She's going down the list now, making phone calls based on the choices the parents have made. We also have a section here about student discipline. Even if you're on Team Sumter, there is an expectation that you follow our code of student conduct, that you behave yourself on the computer, that you are also compliant in doing the work and attending school. Attendance will be taken every period for the secondary and every day for the elementary school. We have a section also that talk about the professional development that we're providing for teachers to help them through this process. We talk about finances and how we are trying to examine all areas to be sure that we're being as frugal as possible, but yet still providing the services and the safety needs that we need for schools. On page 22 is our health and safety section, which is a very important section. There have been some changes, board members, since you received this last, and they are highlighted in yellow if you have that piece. The biggest thing, social gatherings, and we're talking about faculty meetings, SAG meetings, orientation, parent orientation, or PTOs. We're asking them to use social gathering guidelines. Schools will work to maximize social distancing and safety protocols during back-to-school events. We're going to require parents and students to wear face coverings. We're going to try to stagger the times of different grade levels so you're not having everyone there at one time to break up the number of students, and hosting meetings in individual classrooms. A lot of times they would go to the cafeteria as a group and then break out into classrooms. That's probably where they would stay. You would not have a big meeting in the cafeteria. You would actually go to the classrooms. For students, we're going to minimize the points of entry, and we're going to check the student's temperature daily upon arrival at school. And I talked about the temperature piece. We will have a sick clinic or a sick room and a well room. And I say well room is that we have some students that come and just get medication. They're not really sick, but they have to come to the nurse's office to receive medication. They have their blood sugar checked, so they're not actually sick, but they are attended by the nurse. And so we want to keep those two populations separate during the day. We are going to work with students on the proper hand washing. As we monitored by staff, we're going to try to have that as a regular routine in the classroom, that before they go out to PE, before they go to lunch and then return, they're going to wash and sanitize their hands going and coming back. Staff will also have daily temperature checks and upon arrival to school. And it also, staff members who are experiencing COVID-19 symptoms must stay home until they receive a negative result or doctor's clearance. Upon using Skyward, employees must verify that they are not exhibiting COVID symptoms. On page 23, for their own safety and the safety of other staff, are required to wear a face covering on campus and around others. A face covering is required if you're within 6 feet of a student, as a CDC best practice. We talked about also in our plan about the personal hygiene. Cleaning is a big deal for us. We have a new assistant chief over our custodial services, and he has developed a custodial standards, which are attached to the back of this document as Appendix D. It's very detailed. I think it'll make a lot of people feel better when they really realize what's going on the campus when it comes to cleaning the classrooms and the bathrooms, the gyms, the locker rooms, the weight rooms. The air filters are being changed on a frequent schedule. And I have talked with our facilities individual, and there's a certain grade quality of filters that we're supposed to have, and we do have those. There's different grades, but the one we have is efficient. Communication is extremely important. We are going to be putting information out on our Skyward Messenger, Remind, School Messenger, district and school websites, our school signs, our district Facebook page. As things change, as things get updated, as we receive information from the governor, from the local health department, that information will be shared with everyone on those venues. We do expect everyone on campus, and there'll be a sign at the front door that says we expect everyone on campus to social distance, wear face coverings, unwell students and adults will be sent home, frequent hand washing, and covered face when coughing or sneezing. Visitors entering the office must follow those protocols. Community relations, we've updated our volunteer policy, and right now we are going to limit the volunteers on a school campus until things settle down. That keeps more individuals off the campus, even though our volunteers are extremely important, and it is going to be rough in some areas not having those volunteers. But for the safety of our children and staff, we want to limit as much exposure as possible by keeping those adults off the campus at this time. There is on page 26, you see it's called Reopen, Recover, and Revitalize. Those are our 3 phases for the volunteers to be able to come back on campus. There are things between now and the time school opens that volunteers can help schools with. They can help prepare materials, prepare classrooms. So there are things that people want to reach out to help the schools prior to the school students getting there. Athletics and extracurricular activities. This is a big piece of our program. Athletics are very important. Our extracurricular activities are very important. But yeah, we've got to keep our students safe. So there's a lot in here about the pre-workout and contest screening, the facility cleaning, physical activity and athletic equipment, cleaning that equipment, hydration of students, limiting the gathering of individuals at certain events. Let's see. We talk about staff and students who test positive for COVID. For those of you that are listening, we will not tell you who had the COVID case. That is against the law. We cannot say that Debbie Moffitt has COVID-19. That is against the law. Every case that we have, we work with the Sumter County Health Department. They do what's called contact tracing. They advise us whether or not we need to send the person home, whether or not we need to close that class, close that building. All that depends on the health department and working with the superintendent. We are called essential workers, and if we are all wearing our masks and Mr. Trick is COVID positive, and we're here tonight and we're not within 6 feet, we're bothered with that, and he has his mask on and I'm bothered with that, then if he happens to come down positive tomorrow, I do not have to stay home because the masks were worn and we were beyond 6 feet. So those are some of the questions the health department goes through to find out how we deal with the COVID case. So it's not automatically sent home, and parents will not be told that Johnny has COVID. If we have to close a classroom, parents will be told that your child came in contact with someone that possibly has COVID. You'll be told that, but you're not going to be told who. Okay, that is against the federal law. That's a HIPAA and a FERPA violation. And I know because people have asked, are you going to tell me who? No, we're not. We'll tell you that there's something that's happened, but we're not going to tell you who. In the appendix, we have a letter to the parents. We have our monitoring schedule. We have, as of today, we have the student calendar. We have the custodial standards, and we also have what's called a Sumter County Instructional Summary Chart. Let me get to it. And this is all on our website for those of you that are watching here. What we've done is we have a bunch of categories down on the left, and it's about 6 or 7 pages long. And what you can do as a parent, you can compare traditional, Team Sumter, Sumter Virtual, and Home Ed, and what your child will receive or how that will affect your child. Like attendance requirement. Students will follow, under traditional students will follow the district attendance policy. Under Team Sumter, online attendance will be required daily for each class period at this scheduled time. Sumter Virtual, online attendance required by SBS, their current rules. And the last one, Home Ed, there is no requirement. So you can look at every program, talk about progress learning, reading interventions, the guidance counselor services, mental health services that are provided, gifted, homeless. So you can look down as a parent and you can see, based on what program you pick, what services your child will receive or how that will affect your child. Mr. Suber, are you still on there?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Would you like to discuss the custodial standards that our Assistant Chief Field and yourself came up with, please?
I sure will. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Mr. Field. He walked into my office as we were on the thing here, so turning my thing. This is Mr. Walt Field. He's our new Assistant Custodian Chief. He can pull his mask off.
Hello to everyone.
Welcome.
I have to give him lots of credit for coming up with the program and the procedures that you see there. It's been a challenge. over here at facilities and as well as in the custodial realm. Been having trainings. Mr. Field has just come from a custodial training with all of the plant managers today. Everybody's getting on board. We're getting everybody on the same page with these procedures. We're going to have daily checklists, weekly checklists, monthly, everything for our plant managers to go through to ensure our campuses are really clean. We've all worked together with finding the products that is successful in treating COVID. Just this morning, we met with one organization, an outside organization, that can help us if we actually have some positive cases on our campus to come in and clean, working with them as well as our industrial hygienist and other environmental companies that we use in case something like that happens.
And just for your information, the document we're discussing is a 66-page document. It's a very, very thorough. It talks about general maintenance, universal practices, restrooms, gymnasiums, locker rooms, clinics, corridors, entrances. It goes on and on. So it's a very detailed document on our custodial procedures that they have developed.
It's on page 36, what we just handed out.
So Mr. Field has gone into great detail with breaking down every type of room, every type of closet we have on campuses and how we're going to treat those going forward with our daily, weekly, monthly cleanings of those areas. And we are now coming up with a plan in case we do have any active COVID cases where we can come in there and get those cleaned immediately. Some of our other high traffic areas, weight rooms are a particular concern where we have kids in there quite a bit, that we can clean those appropriately. And if we need extra help somewhere, we have organizations that can help us with that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Sewer, Mr. Field. The next thing on my agenda is to talk about, due to the changing of staffing, the changing of kids picking programs, that cause a headache for the schools in reference to doing schedules, pulling kids out of one schedule and creating this new schedule, vice versa. And so the superintendent has provided a budget for additional staff to help out to open the school. So we want you to be aware of that. Some of it could be asking for an ESOL para, a Spanish-speaking para, to come in to make phone calls to some of our Spanish-speaking families to explain the changes to them or what paperwork's being missed. So every school might look a little different as far as what personnel they ask to come in based on their school needs. The last thing that I have is that we also have developed, and it's not part of the plan, but it is on the website, we have a frequently asked questions document. It is about 12 pages long or so, and it has questions. We'll attempt to offer the same courses: elementary, yes; secondary, no; many advanced courses will not be available, and as many, also many CT courses. So this is where a parent can go if they have questions, and it's divided up by instruction, health department, food and nutrition, transportation. And if you have a question, go through it here and see if this is your question, and then you can see the answer that we've provided. As we get questions, we will add to this document. For instance, I just received a question that was emailed to us that asked whether or not we considered block scheduling before we went into the meeting. And to me, the answer would be yes, because we talked about that with our principals, and we also, that kind of mimics the AB schedule that we were looking at. So the answer is yes, we did consider that. The person could email that in. So at that point, I'm open for any questions.
Did we have any questions called in that you can respond to that you haven't covered?
No, the ones that we had called in or emailed are in that document. Okay. And then this one I just received. Right. And then this one I'll add to that tomorrow.
Sure. Is there any public that would like to ask a question? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I actually have several. My name is Stephanie Rollerson. I'm a parent of multiple children in our schools.
Okay.
I do have some questions. You said that volunteers are going to be limited in the schools. Mm-hmm. So what about the lower class grades, pre-K through first grade? I mean, I can tell my pre-K doing blue in the face to stay away from something,
They
but it
can't
doesn't
hear.
mean she's going to. Okay, you're gonna have to come up and talk here, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you have to be able to, sorry.
And then I'll respond to you.
Okay, you said that volunteers were going to be limited in the classrooms. So for pre-K through first grade, are they going to have volunteers to help with the social distancing for these kids?
Not at the beginning, but they will have other people. Okay, answer your questions and I'll answer them all.
Yeah, we have to do this in order. You guys have to.
Okay. Kids with disabilities who struggle with masks, are we doing anything specifically for them?
We'll do this. You got your mask on, I got mine on, we'll team up here.
Okay, I will attempt to wear my mask, but I have severe anxiety and PTSD, so.
Okay. The first question, we are limiting volunteers. We are limiting volunteers. However, we always provide district staff to go out to the schools the first few weeks of the first part of school, and we will work with those individuals, and we will make it work. Okay. Your second question in reference to the ESD students with disabilities, on a case-by-case basis, if there's a medical issue and there's a documentation of a medical issue where a child cannot wear a mask, that is okay. It's not blanket. If you have an IP, you don't wear a mask. There has to be medical reasons for that.
And my last question is that I understand that with teachers and students wearing masks, it's going to severely decrease the chances of COVID being spread. But that's saying, what if a teacher is exposed by a spouse who's an essential worker? Is there a plan in place? Is that teacher going to have to go into quarantine because they have been exposed at home? And then also, what about the students in her classroom?
Again, we'll work with the health department on that. But yes, if she was in direct contact and we were told by the health department that she had to go in quarantine, she would. And then if she's wearing her mask the whole time, the kids wearing their mask the whole time, everything should be fine, no one's exhibiting symptoms, then the class would continue and we would have a substitute in that classroom to continue with courses. Or she could work from home.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any other questions? You're gonna have to come up here.
Been a long time since I've been to one of these board meetings. Hi, my name is Linda Cheek. She may understand this, but I don't, so there may be other parents that aren't quite understanding this. The e-learning that they're doing, you said that they're going to have to clock in for each classroom and beginning of school and stuff. So are they online that whole 48 minutes or whatever with the teacher that would normally be their class, or do they have a separate teacher that's going to sit there and stare at them the whole time? What's happening here? I don't understand how they're actually teaching them, or if they get to see their friends in the classroom or things like that. Okay?
All right, what you see up here on the board is Teams.
Yes.
Okay.
I understand that part.
Okay.
We have that.
All right, so the teachers will be using Teams, and so they will share the screen like Mr. Suber did, to share a lesson, to share activities, to share a video, whatever happens to be going on in class that day. If they're working out an algebra problem, it could be that he's doing the whiteboard and they can see that. The kids will all be up there. Sometimes you can have 20 faces up there, block it out. And so there will be interaction between them. There's also a chat box to where kids can ask questions, they can answer questions. I know this summer with my first grade grandson that the teacher was doing something, would ask a question about the story, and the kids would all put in their answers to the chat on the side. And so there will be interaction now. There could be a time for a 48-minute period class that the teacher does their instruction, answers any questions, and he says, now for the last 20 minutes, you were to read this or to work on that. And yes, they could close that up, do their work, and then that 20 minutes up, they would sign back on and go to the next class. It's going to vary between class to class. Now, elementary, not so much. Elementary is probably going to, attention spans, they're going to be with the teacher, and they're going to be able to see each other all the time. Secondary will have the opportunity, I guess, depending upon the class, where if they're writing a paper or whatever, you're not going to sit there and watch them write a paper. But after this amount of time, this 20 minutes, go write your paper, because you're going to submit your work for this as well. So that's how we're going to monitor that.
So will they, the teacher will still have it up in case one of those
Yes.
kids have a
Yes,
question?
yes, the teacher would still stay on,
Okay.
yes. That answer your question?
More so. So that's how it's different from the Sumter virtual then?
Yes. Yes, Sumter virtual, you're not live with the person one-on-one, you're doing the work, and you can email questions or you can call that teacher during certain office hours. This, the person will be with you from the whole class period or the whole day at the elementary level.
So if you have more than one kid, you need to split them up so they can.
Yeah, and you can also call channels, and you can break your class up into small groups. And you guys, the kids are like, these 10 kids are doing this, you can change channels, and these 3 children, you can work with them on a specific skill in a small group, and then bring the group back together. I had a online course recently in the last, and through COVID, so like the last 4 courses, we had to do ours online as well, and that's how we worked. We broke into groups, and the teacher would pop in and out of each of the groups. Either would work with us while these people are working on this paper, and then she'd work with us on something, then we would work, and then she'd go from group to group. So
The state has something virtual will be called the synchronous instruction, because you're going to have a first period and second period and third period, and instruction will go along with the school schedule. Something virtual would be what they call asynchronous, which means if you want to start your assignment at 9 o'clock at night, you can. But honestly, not every student at any age has the self-discipline to do a something virtual where they have to be self-motivated and a self-starter, because they don't have that constant regular schedule that Team Sumter will have.
and one means live interaction, and the other one's not.
I have one other question.
Okay.
And while you're coming up, the other thing about Team Sumter is that you sign up for that for 9 whole weeks.
Yes.
Yeah, all of them.
We're not flipping them, flopping, back and forth.
It's just hard.
So it's for 9 whole weeks. And that's all. Then they go back to the brick and mortar school.
My granddaughter and my daughter got so frustrated at the end of the school year when they were doing this, because her computer constantly broke. She was on talking to IT more than the child was on the computer working. Is there going to be, when you get one of these little computers, why isn't IT just switching them out or something? It's pretty bad when a kid gets so frustrated they don't want to get back on to do any work.
Well, I know the person who can probably answer that question.
So
You come to the microphone, Mr. Strick, so we don't gotta hear you.
Well, and before he gets up here, and you need to understand that last year, at the end of the school year, was a completely new process for all of us. And so we had to work through how to deal with issues like that. So we guarantee that this process will be better. We've learned a lot through the process, and that it was a learning experience for all of us. And working with parents on an individual basis and kids and the internet and putting internet on buses and having buses out in communities, we were trying to do everything we could to make those things possible. So Mr. Chicken can further discuss, but last year was a learning process, and I apologize for your frustration.
When IT's even saying, I don't know, that's.
Yeah. Well, it's hard when you're remote, when you're not right here. It's different when you're at someone else's house, the distance.
So we did get kind of thrown into distance learning at the drop of a spring break. Thought we did pretty well with it, and there's some things that are out of our control. We did have tech shops open through the spring, and we'll do the same thing. So if you're a Team Sumter student, you will have the opportunity to bring your computer in if it's having a problem. We try to remote to the computer, but I can say the majority of the problems we ran across were related to internet speed. There is no substitute for bandwidth. If you're trying to use a cell phone and calling it a hotspot, you've got to have a certain amount of bandwidth if you're doing distance learning. And we saw that. We had some parents that were insistent that that was not the problem, and we went to great lengths to actually show that it was. So we get it. Not everybody has it available in their area, or they're far from a cell phone tower, so their Wi-Fi is not going to work. We will help you figure out what is the problem. We can fix some. You can't fix it all. But you'll have, no matter what you have, your brick and mortar or your Team Sumter, you'll have access to technical support. We have a direct line that you can call in. If you have sufficient internet access, we can remote to your computers, resolve whatever the issue is. If that can't happen, then you can bring your computer either to the nearest school or to the county office, and we'll figure out what's wrong with it. And
we do have Wi-Fi service available in the parking lots of the schools.
We do.
Remote buses. If
Oh,
you
they
recall, we
had
have
to do that
remote
a couple
buses
of
that have Wi-Fi hooked up for them. And so we do have some options available for parents who don't have that. Plus this year, we've built into the budget, we've ordered a few hundred hotspots, Wi-Fi mobile devices for those parents who kind of really live out where the service is not good.
And where in the spring, we kind of set up a model that you could do work at home without an internet access. But that was more of assignments. Still the capability, but we're really trying to say for Team Sumter, you need to have sufficient bandwidth at your house because, like what Ms. Moffitt said, it's live. It's not do an assignment and turn your work in. You need to have bandwidth where you can communicate with the teacher, where there's back and forth, you can get real instruction. And it requires bandwidth to do that.
Will they have a day right before school starts where will they have their computer and there'll be like a test day?
Yeah, tech day.
It's a little bit different for elementary and secondary schools, but yes.
And also, I would like to remind everyone that the virtual school takes a highly motivated, independent student to learn, because you have to be diligent and highly motivated to do virtual school.
And it is computer driven, so it's just getting the computer with a little bit of technical support from a teacher online or on phone call. So it's not as, doesn't have as much direct instruction as Team Sumter.
A couple of things. Mr. Trick and his staff is not large, but they were working on about 8,000 computers throughout the district. So at 8,000, you're going to get a young yes, I apologize for that. The other thing is that elementary parents who select Team Sumter, what's going to happen different with them, instead of the kids coming and being trained on campus or get their computers on campus, the 4 principals have elected to make arrangements with those parents to bring them in on a one-on-one basis and assign a computer to the child and train you and the student on Teams so that you can then go home and support the child at home. So you will not have a tech day like the high school and secondary schools where the kids come in, pick up their computers, and go on. With the babies, we're going to bring the parents in, and they're going to make appointments, and they're going to work with you individually.
Okay,
Any other questions?
I actually do have another question.
Okay.
I understand that this year we were kind of thrown into distant learning, and I know a lot of kids that had an educational gap. It's a lot different being at school than it is on the computer.
Sure.
Are we reevaluating students to see how far they fall behind?
Yes, the first couple of weeks of school, and Ms. Moffitt may want to address this in detail, but we have several programs that are going to help evaluate the kids, and that will be part of our progress monitoring so we can find out which students actually maybe the learning gap increased for them. But we've also found, and we suspect we're going to find, that there are kids who actually excelled in the distance learning program and did better than they would have in a traditional bricks and mortar.
I have 2 kids who
So
are on the end of the
short
spectrum
answer
of
is
that.
yes. And Ms. Moffitt may want to talk to you
Is
about
that going to go same for children who are on IEPs that didn't get that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For K-8, ELA and math will be using iReady. They'll be given a pretest, and then that will determine where they are at. And then we have the results to compare to where they were in mid-year, which is about January, I think we took that assessment. For the upper grades, as I mentioned, we have Common Lit, which would be the ELA for not high school, and USA test prep for math and science, Study Island for science in 5th and 8th, I believe. So those subjects will have a pre-test, a mid-test, a post-test, And we're also going to have some progress monitoring in the middle, because that's one of the requirements for the state, that we progress monitor and we evaluate those learning gaps, and then what are we doing to fix the gaps? And that's why we're going to see what we're doing, if it's working or not. So yes, ma'am, we will be. And that's for all students in traditional and in Teen Sumter. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Christine Kennedy, and this year I'll now have 2 students in the Sumter County school system. Just so that you have an idea of where our family is coming from, both of our students are in elementary school, and both my husband and I are essential workers. First off is being an essential worker and working with other essential workers. I can only imagine the fears that are in the minds and the hearts of your teachers. And I can only hope and pray that we're doing everything possible to take care of our teachers and their concerns and every bit of their needs, because they're the ones that are going to be dealing with our students. So I hope and pray that we're taking care of our teachers. I also hope that it's been evaluated that, God forbid, teachers are becoming ill and no longer able to take care of their classes, that there's a number of substitute teachers that are actually willing to then step in and take their place, because I question if somebody has gone out sick, whether they have been confirmed positive or not, who is going to want to step into their classroom and willing to step into their classroom and take their place.
We contract with Kelly Services, and that's in the Q&A document. And they already have a supply of subs, and they are always recruiting more subs. So that's where our, I hate to use the word supply, but that's where our supply of subs come from, is the contracted services called Kelly Services.
Okay. In many areas where there are essential workers, there is mandatory testing. Will any of the school staff members be required to undergo mandatory COVID testing?
We have recommended testing and have set up at least 2 different sites, maybe 3 different sites in the health department for our staff to voluntarily be tested. And right now there is no mandate for them to do that. However, if they become symptomatic, before they would be able to come back, they would have to have a doctor's release, and that would, in most cases, ensure that they were tested by a medical professional.
Thank you. Bus capacity. I understand that we're still waiting on everybody to respond on their 3 choices, but is there a concern at this point on whether there is going to be a problem with bus capacity, since?
There's always, Mr. Suter's on here, and he used to be in charge of that, so he'd remember. But there's always a problem with bus capacity, especially the first week or so of school, because routes have to be balanced. And even though you run basically the same route at the beginning of the year that you ran at the end of the last year, it's amazing how many kids have moved and relocated and not notified anyone.
Yes, sir.
And so all of a sudden you end up with crowded buses and not crowded buses. So we're doing a couple things. The mask is the ticket to get on the bus. If the kid's not willing to wear a mask, he doesn't ride our bus. The other thing is we have air-conditioned buses. But we're turning those off, and we're putting down windows when the weather allows. Now, obviously, if it's raining and lightning and thundering and all that stuff, we won't be able to. But those are 2 things that we're trying to do. Kids will hand sanitize. They'll hand sanitize when they get on the bus as part of the process. The buses are cleaned in between runs and sanitized. And we have, they're called misters, where you spray a fine mist that's supposed to sit on the seat. So those are the things that we're doing. Is it enough?
And we're encouraging parents to, if they can, bring
and we're encouraging parents to bring their child to school, especially the first week or 2 of school. Usually we don't do that. Usually we encourage parents to put their child on the bus the first week or 2 of school so that they can learn the route, the routine, and stuff like that. We're not doing that. We're saying if you can bring your child to school, bring them to school.
Okay. What other symptoms outside of the temperature checks? Are there any other symptoms that you're looking for that would exclude a child from class?
That's the biggest thing that we look for. There's a whole list of symptoms, the dry cough, the achy, the typical flu-like symptoms. That's basically what people are looking for. But, we're telling staff if you're sick, don't come. We're saying the same thing to kids. If you're sick, don't come.
Okay.
I would say it's funny, but it's ironic that the past 2 or 3 years, one of our big pushes has been attendance. You know, if you have a little snotty nose, come on anyway, because we want you in school. You can't learn if you're not in school, and that's kind of out the window too, because now, if you have a snotty nose, stay home.
Right. I heard, we just had some conversation about exceptions to masks for students who they may have to qualify for exceptions. What about teachers? Are there going to be, is there going to be times that the teacher is allowed an exception?
Sure, if they're farther than 6 feet away. Our guideline is, if you're within 6 feet, you have to wear a mask or a face covering like this shield. And I'm wearing very inappropriately because it's supposed to be pulled down like that. But that's the guideline, is 6 feet. If you're in a classroom and say you're lecturing in a class and everybody's out there, then you don't have to have a mask. If you're out of PE and y'all are walking the track, or the class is walking the track and they're 6 feet apart, they won't necessarily have a mask because most of me and most of my staff have tried to wear these things all day long to kind of see what a teacher would be going through. And there are times that you're going to need to take it off and step outside for a minute or whatever. We realize that with kids too. So generally, yes, you're going to be wearing the mask, but we know that there are going to be exceptions in the day, and we're going to build in exceptions so that kids can take the mask off in the safest environment we can put them in.
Okay. So after we all went through the experiences at the end of last year of trying to educate our own students at home, there's many of us that are more than willing and eager to send them back to you all and allow
we're willing to take them back.
And allow you to do your jobs and help educate our kids. But at the same time, we are also very, very afraid.
Sure.
And I will tell you that some of the things I'm about to mention, I heard from many parents, and we're all saying the same thing. What in the world is the right decision here? I noticed that on Sumter Virtual, is there going to be the same, how will Sumter Virtual compare to our experience at the end of last school year? Will there be the constant support? Will there be printed worksheets? Will there be turn assignments in at a certain amount of time?
That's more the curriculum and instruction world. So Ms. Moffett, you want to address that?
Sumter Virtual is nothing like what you had last year. What we're equating to last year is Team Sumter, which will have a teacher with this setup interacting. Sumter Virtual is a home, most of our home ed students, and they are on their own doing a computer system with very little interaction of an adult. So what you had last year was mainly paperwork, assignments that were sent out every couple of weeks, which was not the best case scenario. It got us through. Like I said, our first grader doing it, and so what we have stepped this up multiple steps, requirements for the teacher, requirements for the student and the parents. Yeah. So what you experience this time would be totally different than what you experienced in the spring. And if it's not, I need to know about it.
Page 67 in this document does a side-by-side with the traditional Team Sumter, Sumter Virtual, and home education. So on the document that we handed out, page 67 will give you a really good overview of all the categories about that.
Okay. I noticed in the document that it said that if schools do end up closing, that all students will be transitioned to Team Sumter.
Correct.
So that for those of us who, again, both parents are working and are essential workers, that's, the Team Sumter and having the support is obviously preferred. But with both parents being essential workers, that's going to be a very, very big problem. So I would ask that you consider options for those of us families that both parents are going to have to continue working.
The issue that we have, if we get to the point where we have to go to strict Team Sumter, that means the state has shut us down.
Yeah, that's our choice.
And that won't be our call. So that's what happened last year. We didn't shut down, the state shut us down. And so if that happens, we're not going to be able to have bricks and mortar traditional classroom settings. So let's hope and pray that that happens. But that's the only reason that it happened the way it did last year.
Right. So
My concern is if we get to that point, that those of us who have to continue to work won't have an option at all. We're going to be forced on the homeschooling.
Exactly. And see, that's the part, you got to look at certainly the health consideration is the highest consideration, always will be. However, there's certainly an economic consideration that you can't ignore. And that's what happens. And that's what happened in the spring. You had so many people who had to, quit jobs or be furloughed or because they didn't have childcare. Because not only did the schools shut down, when we were shut down, the daycares were shut down. And so that is a dilemma for all of us.
But let me explain something real quick. If the state shuts us down.
Yeah, you can get his mic, the board's in here.
If the state shuts us down due to COVID and we transition to Team Sumter.
Right. The problem is that doesn't provide child.
It doesn't, but if home ed doesn't provide you with child care either. To where if you have someone to watch your kids between 8 and 3 during the day while y'all are working, they should still be able to continue Team Sumter. Okay. Even if we're all home, because that'll still be going on. Okay. So I want you to think if we transition, that you have to automatically go to home ed. That's not the case. As long as someone's watching your kids during the day, they can sit with them while they continue their education. Because we'll all be working from home if we all get shut down. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And then my last question is specific to the kindergarten classes. So my understanding with the rules with the volunteers, there will be no kindergarten help, there will be no helpers in the kindergarten rooms?
Not to begin.
It will be one teacher and his or her class.
Yes.
And other people, it'll be us, there'll be other people.
Yeah.
Be other staff members, it just won't be outside staff people at this time.
Okay, thank you very
Okay.
much.
Anything else?
It's a challenge for all of us.
These are all good questions. Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Good afternoon. I have
What is your name?
Victoria Martin.
Thank you.
I actually have 3 kids going into the middle school and 1 in the elementary school. So my questions would be, to kind of go off of one of her questions, I'm actually a Kelly Services substitute teacher as well. So my question would be, we already had lacking of the subs last year. It was hard to get all of the positions filled. There was always teachers, classes having to go into other classes, classes having to meet in the media centers, all of that. If we have such a lack of substitutes prior to COVID, how are we going to make up for that now?
I know that, and I don't know if Ms. Moffett wants to address this or not, or if Ms. Whitman happens to be online and wants to address the Kelly Services issue, but they have been recruiting teachers to get replacements because basically they did lose some teachers because from March through May, there was no need for the substitutes, and so many of those found other jobs, but they have been actively recruiting since then to try to build that pool of teachers back up.
Okay.
And Ms. Whitman, I don't know if you're on and if you'd like to address that.
I am Mr. Shirley, and yes, I have spoken to Kelly Services, and they have been recruiting all summer and do have more substitutes on our list.
Okay. My next question would be, you said that there's going to be limitations as far as extra classes, like as advanced for the secondary. What is going to be put in place? Are they going to offer any advanced classes for the middle school?
Until we see the numbers and which children sign up for Team Sumter will depend upon whether or not the option will be available or not, whether or not we have a teacher available or not. So those questions about what courses can be offered are going to be based on the kids that enroll. If I have one child who wants advanced something, I'm not going to be able to offer that. So it's going to really depend on the number. So we just want to put that out there that, and a lot of times we have one teacher to teach that course. So it really is going to be on a case-by-case basis. We'll have to work with those parents, look at the kids' schedule, see what they need, and see if we can make it work or not.
And there may be some advantages in that kind of situation because the secondary schools are all going to have the first same 3 periods. It'll be 48 minutes long. We're going to start at 9 o'clock. 9 and 9:48 is period 1, and all 3 of our secondary schools are going to have the same situation. Well, if they have someone who may be teaching, say, Algebra 1 at say, Wildwood Middle High School, first period, their second period class may be an Algebra 1 distance learning team Sumter class. Well, if a kid from South Sumter High School or South Sumter Middle School is taking Algebra 1 the exact class and they're on Team Sumter, then they will take it, but the teacher of record will be the teacher from Wildwood. That's why those first two periods are lined up to be identical, so that there is some flexibility for those little small classes that otherwise we wouldn't be able to offer.
And I dig into that as well, is that if we have, in the elementary level, if I have 3 kindergartners at Lake Pan and 5 kindergartners at Bushnell and 2 at Webster, I'm not going to have 3 kindergarten teachers. I'm going to have 1 and combine those.
Right, you combine those.
So that it might help at the other level as well. It just depends on numbers.
Right.
My other question was, how are we transitioning back into brick and mortar school once they've been in?
Good question.
Yeah, I'll help you.
Good help.
We are requiring our teachers that are in traditional to use Teams and to use a lot of the same technological things that are going to happen in Team Sumter, because what we want, and because we want to be proactive this time, and if we have a hurricane or if we have another COVID outbreak where we have to close, we don't want our teachers nor our students to go, now what? We want them to pick up their device and keep on going. So we are requiring that the Teams teacher and the brick and mortar teachers plan together, that they are on the same curriculum map, and so that no matter if you're coming or going out, you should still be at the same place. You're still going to have your stuff on your computer, and it should be seamless. Our technology word, seamless between the 2 programs. We're really working to where there won't be that, oh my gosh, now what?
So I think I'm more leaning towards, once the 9 weeks is up and we're putting all of these kids back into the classroom.
Well, now, the program's actually for a semester, but we're asking parents if they pick one, if they pick traditional or Team Sumter, to give it 9 weeks. Now, you can stay the whole semester, or you can switch back.
And there may be space available if you decide you don't like it after a week or 2, but we can't, honestly, it's just impossible for us to plan for you to say, my child's going to be Team Sumter this week, and next week you want to go back to bricks and mortar, and then you switch over to Sumter virtual, and then we can't plan for all.
So I think what I'm worried
and so
about.
we're asking for a commitment of time, but if space is available, we would let someone go back into the, either way.
I think more of what I'm saying is, at the end of the time where you're offline Team Sumter, and we put all of the kids back in the classroom, but say we still have to social distance and masks and everything else, how are we putting all of the kids back in there?
Yeah.
What you'll have is the teacher that you're assigned to. Say if we have a teacher at Bristol that has all 3rd graders at Bristol Elementary School, and those kids come back in January, that's their teacher. They won't change teachers. Now, in a situation where we have 2 kindergartners in this school and 3 from that, they'll go back to their home school and be put into a class there. But if your kid's in a class of everyone from the same school, then when you come back, that's your classroom. We're not going to divvy them up, so they'll have the same teacher. So that'll also help with the transition.
So the teachers that are just doing virtual are just doing virtual?
Yes.
Sumter.
They wouldn't be, Team Sumter.
Yes.
They wouldn't be doing both?
No.
Okay.
And we have to be careful with the vernacular, because
Right, we have
virtual is a
virtual.
different program than Team Sumter, even though it's kind of a virtual.
Now, will there be one case or a couple cases where a teacher might be doing both because they choose to, or because there's just one kid? Yes, I can't say everyone, but our plan is that you're a brick and mortar teacher or you're a Team Sumter teacher. Okay.
And you need to know too, even the traditional teachers, one of the requirements is they develop a week-long Team Sumter kind of lesson, because as superintendent, I don't necessarily have the luxury of the health department calling me and saying, next week, you need to cancel school. What they will say is, tomorrow, you will cancel school. And so it's not like I have a lot of lead time when I get those phone calls at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. That means that they, something is spiked, or they have a reason to require me to shut down. And it's, I know many times parents get mad, but I honestly don't have a lot of lead time. It's not like a week after next, you're going to have to shut down. It's not like that at all. You're not going to be in school tomorrow morning.
So I only have one other question, and basically it's, is there a plan in place for pretty much the kids who are overly stressed by everything that has already happened, all the adjustments that they're about to go into. What are we doing as far as their mental health? A lot of these kids don't know how to transition like that.
Sure, Ms. Moffett can address that, it's in the Q's and A's as well.
All of our teachers have been trained on youth mental health first aid. So we'll have about 32 new teachers here next week, or actually this Thursday, and so they'll get that training as well. But all of our teachers have been trained in that. We also have.
Make sure you talk into the microphone.
I'm trying to. We also have a program in Ingenuity. It's a 5-hour mental health requirement for all students to take. That all students, even in Team Central, will be taking that online. It has dating violence, and it also has substance abuse. It's actually a 6-hour course, but 5 of it has to do with mental health. And we also provide training for some of our teachers that have a trauma sensitive classroom. We have additional contracted services with some of our mental health facilities for counseling. We have seed cost potentials. We have a live stream. We also have we work with CAC, the Child Advocacy Center. And so we have prepared for that. We also have 4 psychologists on staff. And so we do know that children are going to have some issues. We might have some staff that have some issues. So we are working with all of that. We've had our psychologists over the summer doing online or phone counseling over the summer with kids that we knew were high need. And so we are working with all of that. And we just need to know who, you know what I'm saying. And so we also have one part of the training that we have is that teachers will be able to identify signs of someone, and then they're going to refer to the counselor, and then we'll take it from there.
As far as the Ingenuity goes, the kids who have already. Sorry. The Ingenuity, as far as that goes, the middle schoolers who did it last year, or in the last school year, are they going to have to repeat it? Or is it the same thing, different?
Ms. Gibson, are you online?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, can you answer that question? Is it the same content or is it changed by grade level?
It is required that they do the 5 hours each year, but the content changes of the program each year.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I didn't want to answer that question without confirming with you first. Thank you.
All right.
All right, thank you very much. Any others?
I just have one more question.
Okay, one more.
If you find out that an overwhelming amount of parents are going to be choosing Team Sumter, say over 95% of students are going to be on Team Sumter, are we just transitioning to that, or are you still going to have the brick and mortar school open as well, even though only maybe 5 or 10?
Requires brick and mortar school right now.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, if the governor's order changed, that could all change, but I firmly believe educationally option 1, traditional school, is by far the best option that we have available. But I understand the insecurity of some parents. I understand the unique physical characteristics of some kids where they have medical issues or the parents have medical issues. But it's not just the child that can get ill, because frankly in most cases the child doesn't get that sick. But they may bring it home to a parent who has had cancer, or a grandma who is 85 years old, or so it's not just the student, though that's, you know, our main concern, but it's also the people at home that a child who may not even have anything but a snuffy nose will take home and give to somebody who's in ill health or elderly.
And you said something earlier, Mr. Shirley, that kind of tricked my mind, about how before attendance was such a big part of school. You know, we had attendance truancy and everything. Now, if you're saying kids just need to stay home if they're sick and different things going on, is that going to still be like a big thing for you?
Mention your first question a little bit again.
If you find out that
we did a survey of parents, and we've had over 2,000 parents respond, and about 25% are looking at Team Sumter, so it's not as high as you think, but that's not everybody, but that's what we have so far. The other part of your question is that, one more time.
Truancy for attendance.
Yes. Even if you're on Team Sumter or traditional, we will, let a parent know that they're sick, or doctors know if they went to the doctor. We're still going to keep track of that. It's not going out the window, but we still want to keep track of it. We're going to have, as we said, some compassion and grace about it, because we do know that we're also saying, if you're sick, stay home. But we just don't want kids staying home just to stay home. But we've also provided a tool that, as long as they're not bedridden, they can still do their education. So that will take into effect. If they're doing their work and being at home, they're going to be able to check in, that kind of thing. So we're trying to be compassionate about this, but we're also don't want to just free willy saying we're not going to take attendance, because we are taking attendance, because that's how we get funded. So attendance is important. We're just going to have to look at how we deal with those situations.
Thank you.
And just a couple things to public, anybody listening out there. We're going to try to keep the Q&A updated. So I don't know, 60 questions or whatever there are with the answers on it now. But as we get questions that we haven't addressed or haven't thought of, we're going to add them to that list. So it's not a stagnant list. It's going to grow as questions come up. So that'll certainly be a source for folks out there. And the other thing, which I think is maybe the most user-friendly part of the document, is on page 67, that does the side-by-side of the different programs. I would encourage you to look at that, and as it changes, and it may, it will also be updated as will the rest of it. Thank you, Ms. Moffitt.
Yes, and I just want to say, board members, yes, I presented today, but there was a whole crew of staff that worked on this for hours and hours and hours, and I cannot thank them enough for the work that they did. We worked on it before I went on vacation. They worked on it while I was on vacation, and then we worked on it the last 2 days. So I just want to thank them. I could not have done this without them, and I cannot tell you, parents and audience, that you have such a committed staff of people that are trying to do what's best for your children. And so, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moffitt.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson, if I may. Many hands make light work. Ms. Moffitt's spot on. Many people worked on this. We had a long committee. If you look on that document, there are lots of folks working on different components of that program. And staff did an amazing job. I looked at several of these statewide, and I set ours up against anybody in the state, including the big districts. It boils down to wash, wait, and wear. Wash your hands and wait. Keep your 6-foot distance and wear the confounded mask. And that's really what it boils down to. And so we're going to try to enforce that. Now that's going to tick off some people, because you're going to have folks that kids are going to, especially the older kids, are probably going to try it. We know that going in, but it's kind of like, if you're going to be in a brick and mortar school, you're going to wear a mask. That's your ticket. That's how you get in the door. If you want to get on the bus, wear a mask. We're not going to fight with parents or anybody else about the pros and cons of mask. If you don't wear a mask, you just don't get on the bus. And parents are welcome to bring them. We're not trying to be hardcore. We're just trying to protect people. And it's not a political statement. It's not anything like that at all. It's purely a health thing, and so that's what we're trying to do. It boils down to Governor DeSantis has declared Sumter County a Phase 2 county. If you're in Phase 2, school's open. End of story. We're considered an essential service, and I think somebody out there mentioned the essential. You're going to be there. How would you feel if you went to the doctor and they said, well, the doctors and nurses aren't here because they're afraid of COVID? Okay, we have a requirement. When you're in the field that you're in, if you choose to be in an essential service, then there are going to be some difficult times that come up. Not very often, but they are going to come up. This is one of them. The governor, when he issued his emergency order, he basically talked about educational success and work and economy, and how continuity of the education process was important to not just the economy, but to the parents and the well-being of the children, because someone mentioned the mental health part. We are concerned. We have a teacher right back there, Ms. Progressor, and she didn't see her kids since March 6th of last year.
But they're still calling me.
And so, They've kind of been gone for that long. And so that's going to be a little traumatic for them. It's going to be traumatic for the teachers. It's going to be traumatic for the parents. And we know that. We're going to try to be patient and compassionate and all that stuff with that, obviously. But none of us are medical professionals. We know that safety is our highest priority, and we're going to err on the side of safety. There are lots of people who said, we don't want to have to enforce this mask thing. I got it. I understand. It's going to be a challenge. And some people may get really mad at us. But if you're going to be on campus, and you're going to be within 6 feet of people, you're going to wear a mask. Now, we know with the little ones, they probably are not going to wear that mask all the time. We're not going to send them home if they're 4 years old and throw the mask off every now and then. But as in talking to a medical professional, he said if you can get a kid to wear it 25% of the day, that improves his odds by 25%. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to use our best judgment on that. There's some other things that we'll look at tonight. We're recommending to the board tonight to at least consider delaying the start of school from August 10th to August 17th. Buys us a week, gives us an opportunity to see what this COVID thing is going to do. Gives us an opportunity to see how many kids are going to ultimately end up in Team Sumter, because it's like turning on the light bulb. You just flip that switch and it's on. And that's what many people think happens in school. You just flip the switch and it's on. Not so. You have master schedules and hiring and a secondary schedule. You have, what we call the singletons, where they have to have advanced band. There's only one period of advanced band, and you have to plug them in that first, and then you have to plug the whole schedule around. It's complicated. Master schedules are not simple. On a good day, a master schedule on a time like this, where you have so many people who may choose Team Sumter, is going to make it even more complex. And so, frankly, that buys us a little time so that schools and staff can make adjustments. We're finding out already. We had a lot of people sign up for Team Sumter, and now they're contacting us and saying, we don't really want that. Our kid doesn't want that. And honestly, secondary kids especially, the whole social butterfly thing is a big part of the secondary experience. They're not wanting to stay home. Mom and daddy may want them to stay home, but they're not wanting to stay home. They want to go out and be the social butterfly that they can be when they're at a secondary school. And so we know that that's going to have an impact, and that's why we're going to be as flexible as we can. But at the same time, we really can't function and have parents drop back and forth on the 3 choices every other day of the week. It just doesn't work that way. Tonight, I'm going to recommend that the board approve our plan, and we'll make whatever modifications and adjustments they suggest that we make. And for the first time, I'm recommending that we send it to the state. The state has to approve it, and if they reject part of it, that we adopt all the other parts that weren't rejected, so that we have some kind of a working document to start the school year. We're running out of time. Our final guidance from DOE came July 6th. It's not like we've been sitting on this all this time. July 6th. And so we couldn't develop our final plan, even though we had a pretty good draft. We couldn't develop the final plan until after July 6th when that came out. And so that's why I say staff has done an absolutely amazing job. Nobody wants to, excuse me, COVID got it. Want to put students or staff at unnecessary risk, but we can't guarantee your child 100% safety. We can't. They may get sick on our campus. They may get sick in your car or on the Walmart shopping cart, or when you go to the restaurant or the 7-Eleven. I can't guarantee that. You've seen, and if you take the time to read this document, we have gone to great lengths to ensure that the environment is as absolutely safe as we think it's possible to be. And so our goal is to mitigate the risk, and I think that's what we've done. And I appreciate all of you, appreciate the audience coming in, and you can see I'm trying to get used to this mask, and it's just about killing me. And I know the teachers are going to have the same issues, but we appreciate you coming out. We're concerned for your children. We're concerned for our staff. We can't have school if we don't have teachers and bus drivers, the cafeteria workers, and the custodians, and paraprofessionals, and everybody else. We can. And we know that. And so we're going to do the best we can to provide a good service for them. But it's not going to be 100% this quick. It's just not. And I think all we kind of realize that. So with that said, Madam Chair, we're through with that part of it, and I think we have some more workshop parts to hit.
I have one thing to say about the students' mental health. The school is their safety zone. Their teacher is their safety zone. They trust people at the school. They trust their bus driver. So putting that mask on with other students around them is going to be a pretty much normal thing after a while. They're going to see, well, my friend Betty did it, so I can wear mine too. And they just feel safe with their teachers at their schools. So I think that's going to be the way we need to think, because our kids feel safe at school.
And I have to say this, a couple weeks ago I went to North Carolina for a little mountain vacation. Masks were the norm. From here to North Carolina to Cherokee, maybe the most independent people in the world, Cherokee Indians. Everybody wore masks. It was the norm at the rest stops and the restaurants, and masks were the norm. And so I don't know that I'm sure there's going to be some battles that have to be fought. Don't get me wrong with that. But I don't know that part is going to be as abnormal as it felt back in March. How many of you remember the first time you went into a grocery store and made yourself put on a mask? Didn't it feel awkward?
Yeah, it felt like everybody
now
was
it's second nature. I don't even think about it anymore. But that first time, it's like, oh gosh, I hope nobody sees me who knows me. But after a while, it becomes a norm. And I think that's where we are as a society now. And I would anticipate that only becoming more of the norm, at least until they come up with a cure or a treatment or a vaccine or something. So with that said, Madam Chair.
My last thing was thank you for the phenomenal
Did
job.
you do a great job?
The committee and the staff and everybody that put this document together is just wonderful, and we can't tell you how much we appreciate all you did. All right.
Some long hours.
With that, we have
long
hours, long days. 97.01, the work budget. Excuse me. Is there any board members that would like to speak?
Sorry, we kind of forgot about you up there.
Yeah, I think you did.
Yeah, we did. Sorry.
I would like to make just a couple of comments about what we've just been listening to. First, I'd really like to thank the parents that are in the audience for being there. I know that this is really an extremely delicate situation for everybody, and I mean it's not an easy decision. But after reading the plan and studying the plan and listening to it again today, I can tell that I have to commend our staff for just the thoroughness, the thoughtfulness, and everything that went into it, covering absolutely every single area you could possibly think of. And, parents, they raise their children, they keep them safe, they try to keep them safe. We educate and we do the same. We try to keep them safe, and we're just doing this to the best of our ability. And that's all we can ask of ourselves. So I just want to thank everybody again. I think it's a very fine piece of work.
Thank you. Any other board members? Okay, seeing none, we'll go down to 97.01 work budget with Mrs. Smith.
Good afternoon. Everybody hear me okay and see?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. We have a PowerPoint. We'll see if we can get that up on the screen. Ashley, you bringing that up? Oh, yeah, I can see it, everybody. Okay, so today we're doing our work budget. Next page, Ash. Is it going? There we go. Our goal is to approve a budget with millage for advertising This is a work budget. It is preliminary. We have 2 more presentations of the budget, the final budget being in September, and we have one next week. The millage approved for advertising tonight can always be lower, but it can never be higher. The budget is a changing document. We are still posting accruals. Our revenue and our expenses must be posted in the year they were earned, not received. So we still are checking the mail, and if we get a deposit or something, we have to deposit in this year, but accrue it to the prior year. So our fund balances and things will change. The next screen, Ash. We're doing this good. Okay, so the key budget issue, of course, is COVID. We always have some budget issues, but this year we have a lot of unknowns. We have COVID, we have personal protective equipment. We've purchased a lot of that already. We have workers' compensation to be concerned about. We are a self-insured work comp fund. We do have excess coverage. We have the Families First Coronavirus Response Act that allows leave to employees who have COVID or exposed, and this is required by the federal government with no funding. So that is an unknown. We have FEMA dollars to try to recoup. Last Thursday, I sent a report to FEMA with a preliminary report. I wouldn't call it an estimate, but it wasn't detailed as they wanted. They're still working on a portal for us to upload all the detail, but it was a number that we'll be submitting in September, and it was about $100,000 we're requesting from FEMA. They are only reimbursing right now at 87%. We have substitute costs that are an unknown, as you heard in the prior presentation. There could be substitute. So substitute costs could be higher than usual. We have Team Sumter that's also an unknown, and what all is involved with that. We have enrollment in all the different that can is an unknown. And then what else? As every day we read something different. We have unknowns we don't even know about with sneeze guards and sick rooms and shelters. And then to me, the big one as the finance side is the economy and where will that go? And we still have our safety concerns. Last year was a big push for our safety. We still have that to keep in mind. And I think our mental health that took part of the safety last year, but I really think mental health is part of our safety as it was last year and now part of our COVID. So those are the concerns in the budget finance. There's a couple more on the next page, Ashley. We still are, all of our schools are Title I schools, other than the villages. Our federal lunch program is continuing. The federal dollars don't fund the salaries that they did at one time. And this is the last month of our federal 21st century 5-year grant. We might get a little extension, but we won't have the whole year like we've had in prior. So while we're on the federal, we're getting a lot of CARES money coming in. It's federal dollars for the COVID response. This one is not, those are not in the budget right now. You'll see the applications and they should be in the budget by September. We're still waiting for approvals in that part, but that's about $2 million right now. And there's talk of other federal dollars coming in. So we'll see that come. Next one, Ash. So they passed an executive order on the finance side. It was a great executive order because it held schools, districts harmless. It let us continue our continue our planning, continue our staffing, saying that if we reopen schools, then we would be held harmless on our enrollment, and that our second calc which is the budget you'll see presented, are the numbers the dollars we're expected to get. Every other year I have ever been involved with a budget, from back in the recession, your numbers depended on what you sent, who showed up in October. This is the first time that they've allowed the second count to be your numbers as long as you have an approved plan. So as Mr. Shirley said before, we're sending a plan to Tallahassee. That plan has to be approved, or we have to make some tweaks. And then that plan has to be approved, and then the budget that we're working with, the numbers should be solid. Any questions on that? Okay. The next one, this is just a history of our funds we've had every year. You can see Title I is starting to come back some, but it's still many years of decrease. McKay scholarships and the other scholarships are growing. You can see that they went to 581,000, and we expect them to be at least 581,000 or more this coming year. That's always a surprise in the budget. We never know who takes part of the scholarships, and DOE just holds back those funds. Okay, next one. Okay, so the increase in our base student allocation is $46.46, and that's great. That's $251,000. But the state also increased retirement rates, and the cost of the increase to retirement rates is $581,000. So it only covers about half, a little less than half of the retirement increase. Base student allocation is pretty much the only part of our budget that the board has free reign, that it's not a categorical, that you're not restricted to the ways that you can use those funds. So we have to work on recouping the $250,000. Next. Just some other things to remind you as we go through the budget. This is all normal every year. We have the charter school enrollment is about 37%. Our increases and decreases in utility costs. Just a reminder, as we look at the budget, the last quarter of the year was not normal. We did not spend diesel the same. We did not spend electricity the same. We did not spend on the substitute costs the same. So the budgeted numbers could look inflated, but if you look to the prior year, you'll notice that something like electricity was higher in the prior year. Diesel was higher in the prior year because last year we saved money. We tried to build the fund balance a little so that we could weather the storm that the economy will present us. We also have hurricanes, shelters to worry about, generators. Reminder that we are considered a sparse district. We're a long rural district, that transportation needs are not met by the categorical. The categorical is only $1 million, but our sparsity calculation is at 1.8, but the state gives us no funding for that and says that because we have a higher tax base, that we should be able to fund transportation ourselves. And we have our security and the support of the many, many devices and technology on the network. Just a reminder, the district consistently ends the year with less expenditures than budget and a higher fund balance. A multitude of reasons contribute to this. This is normal practice of the district to budget expenditures to allow for unforeseen costs due to increased diesel, electric, or hurricane. The district also budgets for all approved positions in the staffing plan, even though some are not filled on the first day of school. There's lapse time, there's terminations, but the district is frugal and it never has the attitude that it is budgeted, it can be spent. Also, a reminder about what's been called the prior period funding adjustment. We didn't have one from 16 to 17, if you are from 16 to 19. If you see that on the PowerPoint, maybe you don't. It's hard to see that all those years were lumped together. But so for a while, we were accustomed to not having this adjustment to our millage. And last year we had a little bit of a surprise because there was a value adjustment board concern with a large piece of property. This year, there was more, and we have a prior period funding adjustment of 0.014 that the state mandates that we add to our millage. If you want to go to the next screen, Ashley, and this is just the statute that explains it, but it's pretty much that if the certified tax value that the tax appraiser provides us in July ends up not matching and meeting the needs by the end of June. Usually we find out in the fall or in October, but sometimes it can be as late as June because of value adjustment boards. Then we have to add that to our millage. And then the next screen demonstrates that. As you can see from 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18, the very bottom line, our under over budget, was how much we have gotten from tax revenues paid by local tax dollars. But in 2019-20, the very past year, the revenues did not match budgeted. In fact, it's never been this low, 174,000. So that's the purpose of the prior period funding, just to recover those funds that were in last year's budget.
Just to be clear, that's not an error we made.
No.
It's the property tax collector. So if he's not spot on 100%, then there's an adjustment to our funding. Of course, in his defense, how do you be spot on 100% every time? So we're pretty close, but that adjustment is not because of the mistake we made.
Okay. So the next screen is just a reminder that there were changes to law. We used to pay the charter school 37% of revenue when received, and now there's an equalized funding for charter, so all 24 payments are approximately the same. There's some recalculations due to FTE and all, but it's the same. So then this demonstrates when we receive most of our cash. It's in November and December. That's the two large blue lines. You can see we received 25 million in December and just less than 20 million in November. Yet expenditures are pretty consistent on how we have to spend. So that's why in years we've done a TANS loan. You want to go to the next screen. So this is a history of the TANS loan and the cost. You can see the total cost last year for 2019 to 20 was $47,000 to borrow $4 million. And we had a general fund balance of 8.4 and a capital fund balance of 7.9. Last year, the board levied the 1.5 mil, which allowed us to bring in more capital. It also, so we have a larger fund balance this year in capital. We also had to slow down on some of our capital expenditures because of shipping from COVID and work crews being able to go on campus for COVID. So I don't know that I would have thought it would be 11.9 million for sure if we had been able to have the last quarter as normal. But because of those two things, the COVID and the board levying the 1.5, we have a larger capital. And so, Mr. Williams, this one is for you. I'll call you this your screen. I am opposing and hoping, and I will continue to watch our expenditures that we will, because of the larger fund balances, we will not need to do a TANS loan this year.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
That's preliminary. I mean, we're going to keep watching and making sure we pay everything, but that's our plan.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the capital millage really helped that. Then we go into the differences in last year's revenue versus this year. You can see the base student allocation on the top screen. There's where you have your 634,000. And then we also have the big number is the best and brightest teacher salary increase. Well, it was called best and brightest. We left it at names, but so it compares, but now it's called the teacher salary increase. And that's to bring all teachers to 47.5. And we will be bargaining that and working on a plan. And we have to submit a plan to Tallahassee by October 1st so that we can distribute. So the word I try to get out there with Ms. Whitman and HR and everybody is yes, a statute that did pass for 47.5 for teachers, but they will not see that on their very first check, not see that on the very first day, because we will have to bargain it, and then we will treat it like a retro check, and we go back and retro them back to when they started. The other increase, as you can see, is required local effort is 1.8 million. That's more that the state is requiring us to get from local tax dollars. 1.8 million. It was 43.6 million, and now it's 45.5 million. These McKay scholarships are in there as an estimate. The other thing is you can see that the discretionary lottery and the school recognition is zero. The governor vetoed all lottery dollars. So there will not be any school grades. There will not be any school recognition funds, and there will not be even the discretionary lottery money. As you can see, we only received $8,000 in discretionary. So it was really the school recognition that was the big part of that last year. Class size is similar. And then our basic discretionary is higher, and that's wonderful and helpful to the district. That is funds that you don't have your hands tied with. That's a discretionary fund, and that's because the tax appraisals went up, and that's a 0.748 discretion. So the increased portion to the district is 1.6 million. Is it the next screen? Yeah, next screen. I'll go through that. So 1.6 million is the increase, but of that 1.6 million, 900,000 of it is the teacher salary increase that we bargained. So that comes off the table. It has to be used for teacher salaries and goes into, we also lost digital funds money, a little ironic with all of the distance learning that we are losing some digital funds, but we did. The cost of the step for our non-instructs is built into the budget, and that's 138,000. Our mandatory retirement increase is 580,000. The other categoricals that are restricted that either lost funds or are not at our discretion are really 152,000. So out of what would look like new funds, really 250 is that retirement that I talked about before that we have to recover from. We cut some positions, and we are being frugal, and the budget was built with the fine, but that's where all the new money went. Just a reminder on where we receive our tax dollars or our funding. Back in 2005-06, we received less money from local and more money from state. And now we have done a complete reversal. In 2021, 14.3 million is from the state and 43.5 million comes from local tax dollars. Next screen puts it a little more in perspective. So you can see there's an equalized funding formula for all districts in the state, and didn't show all districts, but some surrounding districts, Citrus, Lake, and Marion. You can see the blue line is how much they receive per student from local dollars, and the gray is how much they receive from state funding. And we have a much bigger blue line that we receive from local, and a much smaller gray line that we receive from the state. But everyone receives around $7,000 per student. Okay, the next one is our millage rates. The first column on the left was our 1920 millage rate. You can see a required local effort with the prior period funding adjustment, the 0.748 basic discretionary and the 1.5 capital. That was a 5.42 millage. The purple column or the middle column is what the budget would be with rollback. The only difference is the capital fund would be 1.398, and then the total would be 5.25. The column on the right is if we levied the 1.5 in capital, like we did in the prior year, has a lower required local effort, even with the prior period funding adjustment. So that would make the millage 5.352. 5.352 is less than what we levied in 1920. So I built the budget using the column on the right with the 1.5, thinking we were going to try to continue with the capital and see if we could continue to eliminate the TAN. But we can build a budget on required rollback if the board wants to take some things off of capital. We can look at the budget, but we can always advertise for the 1.5 and then continue to work on the budget, and you can always lower it. You can never raise it after we advertise. Any questions on this screen? This is usually an important one. Okay, the board is committed to a responsive budget process that links the district's goals and the objectives with appropriate resources. The board is further committed to maintain a minimum of 5% fund balance level as a rainy day reserve, with the ultimate goal being to increase the fund balance until the annual tax anticipation note loan is unnecessary. We are hopefully there this year with the no TAN. Like I said, we'll continue to monitor that, and the bank is on call if we find that we need to borrow, but we will be monitoring expenditures. I appreciate the board's fund balance and rainy day. I remember during the recession it was helpful, and we were one of the few districts that didn't have to have major layoffs and furloughs, and it was because of the board's dedication to the fund balance and balanced budget, and I appreciate that. The next one, and then we include this in our budget if we have to get into necessary budget reductions, and if the economy doesn't do well with what we're going through with COVID, this screen might be looked at more than normal. But our budget, our guiding principles are quality education in a safe environment at affordable cost for all stakeholders while maintaining appropriate fund reserves in an unstable economic climate. Any necessary budget reductions will be based on shared sacrifices or program determinations that minimize the impact on instruction of students and the needs of classrooms and schools, and every effort will be made to accomplish the strategic plan the district while continuing employment of current permanent employees, making affordable staffing and other budgetary adjustments to serve the long-term needs of the district. That's the PowerPoint. I can go into the work budget a little bit and do some highlights. Are there any questions on the PowerPoint first? No. Okay. I know we have a lot on the agenda today. So. Oh, did I kind of skipped a couple pages, didn't I, Ashley? I usually end with that. I'm sorry. Just a reminder that the budget was prepared with a 1.5 capital. That's a 1.02% increase. Every position is fully funded at full benefits, even if the position is currently vacant. Temporary positions, subs can skew numbers or make comparisons fluctuate. And then we also have what's called the Section 125 benefits, that if employees select investments that lower, or their health insurance that lower their taxable income, that isn't part of, right now it's based on their full salary. So that's where we can have some savings. All reserves are budgeted at our 5,100, and that can make the 5,100 look a little bit larger. And then if reserves are used, it can sometimes be moved to ESC or guidance or whatever, but we budget them at 5,100. Salaries, contract services, other personnel are interchangeable, and they move within the budget. And that also makes salaries or subs or contract services move around. Tell me when. I'm always available for the board. And we run out of time today. And just tell me, because I know we have another presentation, or I can continue at the board meeting if needed. So, yeah. So the first part of the budget is our supplementary pages. I did most of it in the PowerPoint, but if you want to look at page 33, that's the advertisement. It's kind of small. It's in the board agenda too separately, but that's where we will be advertising. 1.5% expenditures are 1.5% less than last year. And during staffing, we didn't allocate every position, and so our expenditures are less in general fund. That's the ad go in. You can see the fund balances across the general fund. That's a summary of our millage and the budget that's for presentation for approval. The next page, Ashley, page 34. This is just showing you the proposed millage rates for surrounding districts. Now everybody's having their work budgets, and so some of these numbers could change, but the required local effort won't change. Everybody has the discretionary of 0.748. I don't know of anybody who's not levied that. The capital is 1.5, and that's where things could change. And the prior period fund adjustment is mandated by the state. Some of the other districts, as you can see, have a critical operating needs extra levy, Marion and Lake County. And then also some have sales tax and impact fees. Then on to general fund. I think the revenue page is really just like the summary that we went over. So if you want, we'll start on page 1 of the appropriations. We're getting there. And page 1 of the appropriations is, the charter school allocation. It looks like they're getting less, but the only reason that number looks small or less than the prior year is the state has not given us their PICO dollars yet. We don't know how much they'll be receiving. Last year it was 1.6, so this number will probably be 1.6 more. We received our numbers that you see in this presentation at 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon for general fund. but they still have not released the capital numbers. I'm sure I expect them to be by September, but probably not by next Tuesday for our next budget presentation. And the next page is our biggest. This is instruction. 5,000 function as instruction. You have your basic instruction on this page, and then we go on to ESE, pre-K, and everything. But this is our big page. The teacher reserves, like I said, are all budgeted there. There's 11 teacher reserves. There are supplements for all of the sports and ag in there. The teacher salary increase is there for $772,000. That's not the 900,000 because the other part of it is benefits of 139,000 in the benefits. So you have your teacher salary increase split between the two. Let's see. Consumables, the 510s. That's a lot of categories. Those are the restricted funds. They're the funds that are SAI, are safety, and often when people build their budget, especially the schools, that's the 1,000 project, the school-based budget, they budget it in their consumable supplies, and that's why that one might look a little higher. But then as the year goes on, they realize they need it in media, or they need it in postage. And so it moves from consumable supplies, but that's where they start out and put it in materials, because often they do need materials. And this year they might more, as we have to worry or be concerned more about materials not being shared. Materials might have to be individual to every student. And so materials could be high. Advanced placement is also in there, and that advanced placement continues to grow. Last year it was 55,000, and now it's 93,000. And then we can go down to 640 equipment. That is a budgeted less. If you remember last year, we spent $1.1 million on equipment. A real big part of that was the district moved forward with 1-to-1 in all grades but kindergarten and first grade. And that was a great thing because we all of a sudden needed that for our distance learning. But now we're bringing our computer purchases back in line to prior years, and it's to continue to build, but also to replace. We don't have to do a full grade other than pre-K and first grade. So this page is $2 million more than prior year. It's $25 million. That's the big part of our budget. It's instruction, and exceptional programs are the next page, and there's continues to get attention and have needs. As you heard, Ms. Tustin is calling parents and working with our ESC students. So there's a few more paras in there that was approved in staffing plan. But other than that, that's been consistent with OTPT. Remember that sub costs might be in prior years. So we'll just have to keep watching the sub costs. On page 9, we have the health application. That's increases that. That's 6,100 function. Ms. Joyner, I think we had a discussion on what is the 6,100. That's nurses, that's guidance, that's our student support staff, and that's where the mental health allocation is budgeted in the 310. You can see $130,000 for mental health. That's different, other than if you look between look at the 7,900 function, this, and look where SROs were budgeted last year versus this year. We changed the cost so it will look comparable, but the state told us that SROs are no longer in 6,100 function. They are now in 7,900 function. That's where the safety officer is. And so all SROs are considered part of operation of plant and not student support services like we paid for them for many years. So that's why you'll see the SROs there on 310. And remember, we didn't pay SROs for the last quarter, very much at all. I mean, they were on campus some, but that isn't the traditional cost that would cost for SROs. We had a savings there this past year. But I think actually go to 79 because I probably should backtrack 1 to 7,800. That's our public, that's our transportation. And you can see that our diesel, we had a savings last year. We usually spend 300 can I read that? Is that right? Yeah. We spent 327,000 prior year, and then last year in 1920 we only spent 200,000. So we're budgeting slightly higher than the prior year, assuming that buses will run the full year, but that is an unknown, and that's where our diesel costs are or could be different. Let's see. And then on 7,900 function, you can see the same for electricity. Our electricity was 1.2 million in 18-19. And then this past year, it was just a million, a little over $1 million. So we were able to save 200,000, but I budgeted equal to the prior year, again, assuming that schools will be open, and that would even be if electric was cost the same as the prior year. So that's why you see these increases, because we don't have the same expenditures to compare with. Some expenditures could even look higher. For instance, like the SCARC grant, we have a small pass-through grant with the state that we pass on to SCARC. And it's 42,000, but last year we weren't able to give them all of their money because it's a performance-based grant, and since students couldn't, or their residents couldn't be there, they couldn't show their performance, but they're letting them carry it over into the next quarter. So we're going to have the 42,000 plus the last quarter's expenditure to be able to pass through the SCARC. Then we have our maintenance on page 26. And this is a transfer from capital, and this doesn't come over unless it happens. It's transfer, and maintenance has been all over the place working on things for COVID, from just covering up the water fountains so the water fountains can be used, installing water fountains that they can use with bottled water, to sneeze guards, to everything. So this is also a page that depends on the unknowns that we talked about at the beginning with COVID. Then on page 29 is the total, the budget. It's $88.3 million and appropriated for general fund. We have our teacher reserves, our para reserves, administrative reserves, ESE allocation increase, the teacher salary increase. That 1.4 includes the charter allocation that's in here too. Our retirement, our capital transfers, and we have $2 million in category roll forwards that are restricted funds, like textbooks or safe schools, that only can be used for those. Any questions on general fund? Okay, we'll quick go to capital. but I think Mr. Suber covered the projects in capital. So I just wanted to, you can see the the area in yellow there is the charter PICO right now is 0. And we don't know for sure our CO and DS. So those are yellow, but this is the budget, the capital budget built on 1.4 million with 11 million, you can see 11.9 in our fund balance. Is there anything you want me to go over on capital? Because I think Eric, Mr. Suber already did that. I'll just speak to food service quickly. Food service did well this year. We get all of our funds through the free and reduced now, and they did a lot of serving foods. I can't believe the numbers that they had. We had buses taking them to the community, but the fund balance grew about 100,000 in food service. We're still posting some things with summer feeding and all, so it could change a little, but food service did well. Our federal funds, like our regular federal funds are there. We still are working on getting the CARES, and those are some grant applications the board is approving tonight. And we'll wait and see how that comes in, but our current is almost 5 million, and then we'll have 2 million in CARES. And then the only other two to talk about is our internal service funds. Yeah, it's our work comp. Work comp did well, even with the board was able to waive the some of the contributions this past year. Our fund balance in work comp is just over 1 million. That's good. And then our health insurance is also just over 1 million, and that's not bad, but we did go into fund balance in our health insurance, and we're going to have to monitor that. We may even have to transfer some work comp over to health. At least we have that good fund balance there. You know, health costs continue to go up. We hope that we can monitor them and keep them down, but I am watching the health insurance and with a cautious eye. Can the board think of anything that I haven't covered that they have questions on? I think that my presentation of the budget.
Debbie, the only thing I asked Mr. Shirley to make sure of is every child gets a free lunch again this year?
Yes.
Good. Good.
Breakfast and lunch.
Breakfast and lunch free. Okay, thank you. Any board members?
Ashley's bringing up. Thank you, Ashley. She reminded me that this is the last year when we levied the whole 1.5 capital. This is the advertisement we put in the newspaper to explain how we have to advertise an increase, but the millage rate is going down. So this is similar to the ad the board saw last year. And if we levied the 1.5 in capital, a house worth $300,000 with a $25,000 homestead exemption would go down $18.70, assuming their tax value or assessed value stays the same. If their assessed value goes up, and I think that happened some last year, but it doesn't usually happen every year, so hopefully that was, but if their assessed value stays the same. And then you can see our millage rates compared by year from 6.35 in 2013-14 to the proposed of 5.352. And this would run in the newspapers if you approve the budget for advertising the way it is.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Smith. Is there any questions in the audience, public would like to ask?
Do you all approve do you all put in for the millage, or does the property appraisers put in for the millage for your budget?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
I didn't understand. The property appraiser gives us a tax value, and the state tells us we have a required local effort. That's a equalized funding formula. And then the board has discretion over about, what is it, I can't read it, it's so small, but the board has discretion over millage of 2.248.
That's correct.
Did that answer the question?
Sort of. So,
okay.
What I'm getting at is, I don't know about anybody else, but $18 a year is like nothing to pay for children's and grandchildren's education. So why is the millage keep going down? Why is it not staying the same or higher? Is that because of what the property appraiser is telling you the millage should be, or is that something you all say the millage should be?
There are two components to the, let me try it first, Deb. There are two components to our taxes, actually two or three. One is called required local effort. It is established by the legislature every year, and it is a levy that is applied to the property taxes in Sumter County for Sumter County students.
Okay.
Okay, that's a portion of it, and that's a required local effort. And this year, Deb, what is it this year? 3.104? Then the school board has two little bits of discretionary millage that they can levy on top of what the required local effort is, which we are required to do. One is a 0.74, is that how much it is?
0.748 and 1.5.
Yeah, 748, and that's a little minor amount. And that goes into our general fund budget so that we can use it for pretty much whatever we want to use it for. The other part, which this year is, how much, Deb?
1.5.
The 1.5 is one that we can levy for capital stuff and equipment. For the last 10 or 11 years, except for last year, we lowered taxes every year. However, last year, because of the Marjorie Stone Douglas stuff that happened in Broward County and us having to school harden our campuses, we increased the millage for the first time in 10 or 11 years. But it was to pay predominantly for the hardening of the campuses so that we had single points of entries and campus cameras and all the many other things that we spent last year. This year, the reason for the recommendation again for an increase, again for the second time in 10 or 12 years, is to help pay for the COVID-19 things that we are having to implement. For example, we're going to have a thermometer, a no-touch thermometer for every teacher so that they can check the children when they come in their classroom. Otherwise, I had this vision of 1,000 kids lined up outside of school and a couple little no-touch thermometers, and it's lightning or raining or 98 degrees, and we're having to check all those kids before they come on campus. So what happens with this revenue is we're able to buy a handheld thermometer for every teacher so they can check their 22 kids instead of the 1,000 kids.
And stop in the batteries.
But as the flip side of that, as the property taxes work, as the property value in the county goes up, then even if the millage stayed the same, the dollars that came into the district would be greater because you've added another Brownwood up at the villages, or you've added a pool to your house, which increased your value by a few $1,000s.
Okay, I just never understood that you all came up with that. I thought it was just a number that the property appraisers themselves figured out.
They come up with the value, the dollar value of the property.
I understand that part.
But we,
like I said, I for one, I get upset every time a year it goes down, the same I do with the FAR tax, because I don't think those two things should ever go down. They need to be the same.
I just want to add that.
It's not like 50 cents every year, you know?
I just want to add that the proposed
growth in the county, even though the millage will be less, the amount of taxes generated for the Sumter County School District will be greater, so therefore you have to advertise the taxes.
And I just want to clarify to her, right now the budget is based on the most we're allowed to levy. We're only allowed to levy 1.5, and we're only allowed to levy 0.748. That's all the board has discretion on.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chris.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chris.
Hey, Chris Alvarado, I represent the teacher unit here in Sumter County. Mr. Shirley and board, are we getting funding from the state to supplement some of the supplies that we're going to have for our schools to reopen?
Ms. Smith, you want to answer that one?
We are not getting anything extra at this time, other than the staff has worked on some CARES grants, and they have put some, Debbie Moffett might want to help me, I know they put some masks in some and some shields in some. On Thursday, I submitted a report to FEMA, hoping to bill them for $87,000 worth of expenditures that we've already spent. And we're tracking expenditures and hoping that FEMA and the new CARES grants will take care of a lot. Capital helps. We have a good capital budget that can buy equipment, and that helps there.
In some of the grants that, in fact, the Jumpstart kindergarten grant was just approved today for us in the villages. We just got word. So some of the grants are dealing with helping with some of the after-school programs to help children jumpstart back into kindergarten. We've also got a couple after-school programs for the early childhood to help with some of the COVID slide. But also the assistant chief is going to help with the custodial. He's paid for out of the grant. With the additional of the instructional technology person that I talked about to help teachers and students with technology is paid for out of the grant. But we have put some materials and supplies. We have put some professional development. We have put things in that we felt was supporting the teachers and the students, either through materials, through training, through programs for kids, to help supplement where we are.
Yeah, and I'm just coming from the standpoint of we get this order from the governor that says we have to open by such and such date, brick and mortar, but we're having to rely on grants. We're having to rely on a hopeful from FEMA, but yet we know that what I don't want to have happen across the state, which I'm sure it is that we're going to have to take some money from here to pay for hand sanitizer. And that, to me, addresses some of these audience members that have come up here too, and that, what are we doing here? But I just
and Chris, that may well happen.
It's going to happen.
Well, DOE did send us, I don't know if anyone here's got one on, no, they're the white Hanes masks for our teachers, 5 per teacher, so we have sent those out. So they have helped us with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Smith? Board members, do you have any questions? Seeing none, we'll go to 97.01, student progression plan. Public input. Alan?
Yes, ma'am. I'm right here. I was making sure this was my cue. Well, good afternoon, good evening. So student progression plan, it is that time of year. And fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, because of all the circumstances that happened this year and with all of the focus on the beginning minimum salary at the legislature this year, legislatively speaking, they pretty well left us alone as far as policy is concerned for this year. So our student progression plan is probably something that's going to be fairly quick. Does everybody have access to that document, or do I need to try to share my screen? Is everybody able to see the change document?
Yes, the change document.
Okay. All right. So the change document is what we'll focus on. And if there are any questions in that, then we can go into the draft. If there are questions that I'm not able to answer for you, or that other people on the call aren't able to answer. But if you recall, the change document pinpoints what page, what paragraph, what exactly was changed, the person who was responsible for it, and so on and so forth, and then a note if it's something questionable. So we'll go down the line, but what you're going to see is that most of our changes this year were intended to either refine language or get rid of repetitive language. Really very few significant changes this year. Ms. Goodson, you'll see in that first section under general, basically did a lot of cleaning up as far as what it takes to be registered and in attendance for the schools. In the blue language there, you have new wording. So, for example, she added documentation of the child's date of birth in a manner provided by Florida statute. And so what she did was get all of the requirements into one list where previously it was in multiple sections within the document. Are there any questions under the general section with anything that was changed there?
Mr. Shirley, can you share the change document for the audience?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see here. Let's go to desktop. All right. Can everyone see that okay? Oh.
Yes, and before you start, just so you know that our student progression plan is located on our website all year long, that you can go in and search it and look at it.
Yes, it is always posted there. Okay. All right, so board members, did you have any questions on the general section about any of the language that was changed there?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, so then we get into the elementary section, and like I said, there just really aren't a lot of changes this year due to the fact that legislatively there weren't that many changes. But one thing that you're going to see, even though it surfaces first here in elementary, it's going to surface all the way through middle school and high school. Instead of specifically stating on the FSA, it states on the most recent, because FSA was not given this year. And so the most recent statewide standardized assessment is what is used throughout the document language as far as for placement purposes within the reading program, which Miss Jessica Christian put into place there. So that's all that was changed in the elementary section. And then we'll scroll up. Middle school, once again, just the change in language for most recent. And then Miss Goodson there added in the piece about the suicide prevention, child trafficking, and substance use for the health curriculum within middle school, because that's required. That's required instruction by state statute. You've got another change to just say most recent instead of FSA. Then we have clarification on unexcused and excessive absences, and it speaks to the fact that criminal truancy will be recommended for alternative placement. That's not new. It was just clarifying language. So any questions on the middle school portion? All right. So then we move on to the high school portion. And once again, you've got Ms. Goodson's section there where she combined a couple of sections together. And then there's a portion that Ms. Moffitt struck due to special diploma, because that's no longer an existing diploma option, so it was no longer needed. And then we were able to add this year Lake Tech as one of our dual enrollment partners for CTE. In the past, if you recall, our students only had the option of WTI in Citrus County, but now we have been able to partner with Lake Tech, and we have had our first couple of students actually be accepted into Lake Tech welding program for the upcoming year. So that's something that we're working through the kinks on because it's a little longer commute, but definitely an exciting opportunity for some of our kids. And then we struck Santa Fe College because we lost that articulation agreement with them. And that was because of them choosing not to partner any longer. Next piece of substance is the addition of Ag Foundations. This is not new. It was just not in the list as an equivalent course that could be utilized as a substitution for, I believe it's a science credit in high school. But for whatever reason, it had just not made it onto the list, but it was added to the list by Mr. Ferguson. And then you've got another section there that was just repetitive language in regards to attendance. So it was stricken, and that was in conjunction with the additions and combinations that she did up in the general section and the earlier high school section. And then another section that was just no longer needed and was struck due to special diploma language. And another line about Santa Fe College no longer participating and Lake Tech coming on board. So same as a previous section. And then Ms. Coomer with virtual instruction. She just did some clarifying language there, speaking to basically the ramifications of withdrawing and not completing a virtual course and what that means for a student to withdraw, because that's always a little bit of a fuzzy understanding for parents in particular, but sometimes for school staff as well, understanding that if their student doesn't complete, then they do receive a withdrawn failing grade if they're not keeping up with the timeline of the virtual instruction. And other than that, that's essentially our student progression changes this year. Like I said, it's an abnormal year for a lot of reasons, but this is certainly one of them, because student progression plan is usually a much more in-depth, legislatively driven change document. But this year, we were fortunate in the fact that we were able to spend most of our time just cleaning up the document and not having to add new items or new changes from the state level. So are there any questions or any clarifying points that myself or anyone else might be able to help with?
This is the whole document. I mean, it's not a little thing, so it's quite in depth, but it is online.
Okay, seeing no questions, anybody in the audience have a question on pupil progression plan? I guess that concludes the board members. Do you have any other questions?
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
Well, very good. Well, if anything comes up, you all know how to reach me.
Okay, I guess I need a motion to adjourn then.
Sally Moss. Sally Moss, second.
Who was the motion by?
Ms. Joyner.
Ms. Joyner. Motion by Ms. Joyner, second by Ms. Moss. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Kathy Joyner, aye.
David Williams, yes.
Moss, yes.
All, motion passes. Thank you. That concludes our board workshop, and we will have our board meeting at 5:30. So thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
And thank Deputy Butler for stepping in and keeping us proud under control.
No problem. Thank you. Okay, we'll have